Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for being here today. I am Chris of the world-famous Chris and Christine Show podcast. You can find that on the old interweb if you decide to look that up, and I encourage you to do that at chrisandchristineshow.com. And speaking of the website, just the other day, like a couple days ago, I decided to do a few tweaks and changes to the website. Nothing crazy major, just a little minor updates here and there. And it's always fun to maybe tweak a few things here and there. Now, one thing about the Chris and Christine Show website that I was kind of disappointed we didn't have was an actual player page, like a page on the website that had all of the episodes lined out in a row. How do we even get that to happen? Because I kind of like the website the way it was, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but I didn't have a place on the website to actually have a place of episodes lined out to where everybody can go to and pick and play right there which episode they wanted to listen to. The website didn't have that, so I'm like, how do I do that? And it just dawned on me that here on Podtastic Audio, I am using Podpage. Now, Podpage is amazing because what it does is it creates an entire website for you for free. Well, there's a paid version, but the free version will design a website too. Unfortunately, it's not your own domain name. It's actually podpage.com/podtastic-audio is the actual website name. But what it does do is it creates an entire player with all your episodes lined out, and it keeps the original artwork that you create for your podcast. And I love our podcast artwork for the Chris and Christine Show. I create an individual artwork for every episode. Every one is completely new and different every episode. So with Podpage, it creates an entire website focused on that, creating a player with all of your episodes lined down in a row, already good to go. And I thought, you know what? I love our current website, but I do not want to get rid of it. And I love Podpage. I'm like, well, I don't want to just jump over to Podpage and just, leave the website or whatever. I'm thinking, you know what? What if somehow I can combine the two together and on one? And that's exactly what I've done. So I've created a new, Chris and Christine Show pod page. You can go to podpage.com/Chris and Christine Show. It'll take you to the Podpage website. Yes, it's all there. The players are there. Great. But now on the Chris and Christine Show website, I also have a tab at the top of the page. It'll be episodes. If you click on that tab, it takes you right to Podpage. So it's like the episodes are on the website, even though they're really not. Just another link to it. It's just a simple way to kind of combine them together. So now everything is on the Chris and Christine Show website, chrisandchristineshow.com. So today here on Podtastic Audio, I hope you're having a great time creating your podcast. And listen, if you need any help creating a podcast or figuring out what works or what gets you the best sound or sound quality for not spending lots of extra money on crap you probably don't even need, I'm here to help you out. And one of those amazing tools that I use exclusively, and that is Cleanfeed. You can find them at cleanfeed.net. Now, what is Cleanfeed? It's an online, totally in the browser recording platform. You can record yourself just here on the computer in your own little room. You can record right onto that, save it to your computer, or you can do what we do is use it to record guest interviews from anywhere in the world live, and it records everything in the browser and just downloads. It's very simple. It sounds very, very good. Now, a big, huge congratulations to Marc Bakos and Marc Hills of Cleanfeed. They just won an Emmy for Cleanfeed. Now, this comes right off of the Emmy's website. It's for engineering Emmys. They won an Emmy for their work with recording software for working in film and television production. It says here that Cleanfeed is a high-fidelity conferencing call system as a service with a focus on audio production. It enables collaboration with audio quality equivalent to all participants being together in the same studio and with low latencies for smooth interaction between talent. Cleanfeed's innovative technology has advanced workflows in the industry, including being accessible to at-home engineers and talent who use a straightforward link in the web browser to enable full-scale TV and film post-production. Congratulations to Marc Hills and Marc Bakos of Cleanfeed. This is amazing. This is huge. I feel like I'm part of the crew because I promote Cleanfeed so much. And I use Cleanfeed like exclusively. I talk about it all the time. I feel like I won the Emmy too, even though I really didn't. But big congratulations to Cleanfeed. This is amazing. So now I use exclusively the Emmy award-winning software, Cleanfeed. And because this is such an amazing achievement for pretty much anybody to win an Emmy, especially something like this, so I decided to go flashback to my interview I had with Marc Hills and Marc Bakos of Cleanfeed. I had this interview back in May of 2021, so it's going to be a replay, but this happens to be my most popular episode by far, is my interview that I had with the co-creators and co-founders and basically the creators of Cleanfeed. Now, the Emmy award-winning creators of Cleanfeed. Here's Marc and Marc Hills. Here's that interview recap. Okay, so today is a very, very special treat. I am joined by Marc and Marc, both Marcs, Marc Hill and Marc Bakos of Cleanfeed, the co-founders of Cleanfeed. You know, I've talked about Cleanfeed on this entire podcast. I love hearing about Cleanfeed and talking about Cleanfeed. And here are the guys who made it. Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Very well. All good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good to join you.
So where in the world, I know where you guys are at, but so tell our audience, where in the world are you guys located?
So I'm based in South London, about half an hour from central London. And the other Marc?
I'm based in North London. So, yeah, we're just opposite sides of the city, basically. And you get a treat, both of us, tonight, I think.
Marc and Marc. Well, thank you guys so much for showing up here on Podtastic Audio, where I talk all about podcasting and simple tricks to make your audio sound fantastic without spending fantastic amounts of cash. So, Marc and Marc, where did you guys first meet at? Was it like a Marc convention or something? What?
It was an interesting. Well, actually, if it was a Marc convention, I would have been there. I think it started off with a quick email. Marc with a K, Marc Hills, had written a bit of software that I wanted to use for a hospital radio station, which I was working at the time. I still do, in fact. And we just got chatting about a few things, and we decided to meet up and see if we could bring what Marc had written to the masses and in the browser. So yeah, I think our first physical meetup, although they're very rare even till today, was at the Royal Festival Hall.
All good ideas happen there. Yes.
Yes.
Is that like where you meet the Queen or something?
No, but there's a beautiful area of London on the south bank of the river where you've got lots of different sort of, artsy, theatre, music, all those kind of things come together. So, it's a good little meeting point. It goes, like Marc says, it goes back really before the days of the web-based Cleanfeed. We were writing kind of specialist software for getting audio from one place to the other. The real story goes back probably over 20 years when I was doing, similar to Marc with his hospital radio, doing like college radio or student radio. And we would use transmitters to do outside broadcasts. So this is really old school, where you've got like radios and radio waves and all that kind of stuff.
Is that kind of like the old ham radios back in the day?
Pretty similar, yeah. You'd need a large antenna on the top of a building, and you'd probably in our case have line of sight to somewhere that you were beaming it back to. So it was such a heavyweight thing, but that was really the only solution at the time. This is going back a couple of decades. And over the years, I got really interested in software and using the internet to replace that. And to begin with, it was really specialist software, not not necessarily accessible to everyone. And but that's where I think we managed to tip the balance with Cleanfeed. Basically, Marc and I bonded over sort of having these similar problems of needing to connect people together, and just trying to find a way to make it really easy to do. So, and that's where we get to today.
And Marc Bakos, didn't you have like a radio, like audio background?
That's right. So I actually went straight out of school to an audio specific college, and then I think quite soon after that did a bit of internship at a well-known radio group here in the UK. So that's sort of where my radio, what do they call it? Sort of like obsession began. And everyone still has it. Once you start in radio, the obsession lives on. But yeah, that's where I sort of got the bug. And yeah, I've just continued with that even till today. Actually, I've still got my finger in a few radio station projects. So it's always good fun to still be in with some old friends and some very talented people, both here in the UK and also in the US, because we seem to be even closer these days. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, really.
It doesn't. I mean, with obviously with Zoom and Cleanfeed and tools like that, people can connect all over the world. Like we're connecting right now. I mean, how many miles away are we? Like 6,000 miles or 5,000? I don't even know, 5,000 miles?
A long way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and I think the key thing that we like to mention when people say this is so Chris, we're talking to you right now, and if people are listening to this in a podcast, the quality that you're hearing on the podcast is what Chris is hearing and what we're hearing through our headphones right now. Okay.
Yep.
So Cleanfeed is about bringing people this kind of high quality conversation live, because that's kind of really how you bond with people. It's not about like gathering together recordings later and processing it into some results. What you can hear on the podcast is the quality that we're actually doing when we make this recording.
So going to Cleanfeed, what was the idea behind it? Like when did you actually say, you know what, let's get together and truly design this computer software to where we can talk to people across the internet? Like what was where did you start with that?
Well, there's a moment where it became possible just enough to do this in a web browser. And at that moment, we racked our brains into how to just make it something truly accessible, because this kind of high quality audio connection used to be the domain of like expensive equipment and things, or rigging up antennas on the top of buildings if you go back even further. Okay. So I think we wanted people to use their creativity with this new capability. We just thought I think it's excited me for 20 years. And so that was, I think, the moment where we said, yeah, if we can bring this to more people, they will find interesting ways to use this. And we knew about podcasting because, the real parallel between podcasting and live radio. So we knew about some of these sectors that were really interesting, but we also knew that people would come to us with new and interesting and exciting ones as well.
Yeah. I think the thing we really wanted to break, or at least from my side of things, was doing these audio links in the past was actually a very expensive ordeal. You needed, like Marc was saying, either very expensive antennas and time to rig that up, and for the average person, and unless you had the expertise and engineering know-how, that was actually quite difficult. But then it turned into ISDN, which was a very specific line you could order from your service provider. And even that was expensive because you had to buy 2 boxes at both ends. So both people needed very specific hardware to do this kind of stuff. So I wanted to break this paradigm of it has to be expensive, to sound good. And actually, it doesn't need to be that. And I think I was most frustrated by that barrier, which is I just want to speak to, a friend at the radio station from home. How can I do that? And I think, we've clearly achieved that, and we're in a different era now of high quality audio over the internet. But yeah, I'm quite glad that over 5 years ago now, isn't it, Marc, that we managed to do that. So we've been doing this for more than 5 years, basically.
Fantastic. So Cleanfeed, the way I understand it, all of it gets recorded in the browser. and it gets saved to your computer, and everything's done live. There's no double ender tricks. So how would you say it compares to a lot of the other podcast video, the audio sharing platforms that are out there?
You've probably answered it slightly in the question you've just asked there, because of course you slipped on the V word. So Cleanfeed is totally for people who care about audio. Okay, and it's not necessarily a thing that people are. Video can be a distraction. Not saying it always is, but sometimes you want to get back to basics, and so Cleanfeed is totally focused on audio because it's audio that creates that real connection and that rapport and that conversation between people, I think. So how do we compare with? There are other services that do things. I can't do a straight comparison necessarily, but Cleanfeed is focused on the audio basically. Yeah.
So I know it's kind of a complicated question, but how does it actually work? Like, how does it, how am I talking to you and you're hearing it on your end and I'm hearing it on my end? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, it depends how deep down this rabbit hole you want to go, Chris.
Okay. So there's a troll or a gremlin, I know, in the computer, and it's spinning a wheel, and that's going to happen.
So how does it work? So mostly when you're working with digital audio, you're splitting. You probably, if your audience here have been working on podcasts and things, they're probably familiar with that waveform view in maybe Audacity or some audio editor. Okay, the waveform, that sort of line is the kind of is what you'd call the analog sound. It's like it's the airwaves being pushed around. So what we do is the computer is digitizing those into usually sort of smaller frames of audio, you might call them. Okay, that might be the term you use. And each one of those gets bundled together into a little packet and slung over the internet. Okay, where at the other end it's received, the envelope's unwrapped, and that represents a tiny portion of the waveform. Okay, so these systems are all about reducing things like latencies and other delay down the line. Okay. So you're basically trying to make that process of slinging a packet over the internet as efficient and as quick as possible and turning it back into moving air from a speaker or for some headphones or something. I'm not sure. Is that?
Yeah, I got it. Well, it's kind of how the internet kind of works when you send an email or something across the internet. I think it kind of does the same thing with packets.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yeah. And your email usually isn't sensitive to delivery times. If it takes... if we're lucky, it might take 5 seconds for an email to come through, but it might take 5 minutes, and broadly the time isn't sensitive. When you're working with audio like this, it is absolutely sensitive to that, and that's what we care about.
Right. So the time it takes for me to say something, and the time it breaks it apart into these little packets and sends it over the internet to you to hear it, it's got to be extremely fast, I would think, that whole process.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And then of course the end result though is presented in this really intuitive way on a user interface on the screen. Okay. So I suppose in a sense that's the idea here. You don't need to know about packets and waveforms and things. It's interesting to talk about them, but if somebody's using Cleanfeed to record, say, a podcast like you're doing, they connect into the interface, they join the people in to the group, into the session, and they press record and we chat. So it's similar to like other conferencing tools in that regard in the end result. Okay. But what's going on underneath with Cleanfeed is you're paying extra attention to all these aspects of the design that make it suitable for like professional audio and those kind of applications.
So why does the audio through Cleanfeed sound better than the audio sent through, say, a Zoom call or something like that?
The answer to that is fairly simple. We don't like touching your audio. It's as basic as that. We don't believe that your audio should be adjusted in any way, and it gives you the chance to use any equipment you like. I think the biggest thing to note is it doesn't, some people may have really good equipment, and they want to hear that. And so we don't want to muddy the water here. If you plug in a good mic and you've got some special settings at your side and your friend has their own setup and that sounds great, we want that recording to be captured the way that it was intended to be heard. So unlike other systems where they decide to adjust things and tweak things for whatever reason, things don't always sound exactly how they were meant to. So does that summarize it quite?
Yeah.
Well, it's half of it, isn't it? There's a little more to it as well, which is your a tool like Zoom is designed broadly these days for your grandma, or your work colleague, and the environment that's going on with that. Okay, so. As Marc says, once you've captured really high quality audio and you've said, actually, we're going to, with Cleanfeed, for example, we say to people, wear headphones. Okay. Then that makes the capture of the audio a little bit better because you've already got people doing things that you would do in a professional environment. So that's part of it, the capture, like Marc says. And then the second part of it is just building this infrastructure and software that is tailored towards professional audio. Okay, and that's what we do. That's the real distinction, I think, is when you get into carrying that audio around.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think Cleanfeed sounds fantastic. The first time we used it, we tried Zoom, and we were going to set up with a few other accounts like Zencaster and things like that. But then I said, let's try this Cleanfeed. I just Googled, literally just Googled the Cleanfeed. Googled audio sharing platforms, and Cleanfeed came up in the search results. So I just said, let's try it and see. And I was blown away. And we did a few test runs, and I was like, holy crap, this stuff sounds as clean. Like, I can't tell the difference between what has been recorded here in the same room or what's been recorded outside the room. It all sounds the same to me.
Well, Chris, we've got a surprise for you tonight.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
I don't know, Marc leaning over your shoulder maybe
what?
Or something. Yes. Yeah, exactly, though. You're right. You can't. If you do this right and you've got a good setup, you can't tell the difference. And when we're talking about having a good setup, we're not talking about some kind of incredible BBC level setup. It's just... I think the great thing about the Cleanfeed community is they like to pay that little bit of extra attention to just having a good setup. And good doesn't mean complex either. Just a good quality USB microphone and some headphones is all that's needed. And in fact, that's very similar to the setup that we're using at the moment. So yeah, it needn't be a complex setup. It's just about getting the focus on the audio and just spending a moment to get a couple of things right. Get a nice, quiet environment. Get the right distance from the microphone. Pop a pair of headphones on, and then Cleanfeed will let that then shine through in the connection to the person at the other end. So then you can actually build a conversation and build a dialogue with them, and enjoy the chat.
If there's an audio problem with your guests, because we've had those, you do have features built into the Pro plan that help fix some of that stuff, and I love that.
Yes, if you're, we were talking about, say, mainstream stuff like Zoom and things. You can, if you're having particular trouble with a guest who's just set up, maybe they're using the mic on their laptop, they don't have any headphones, they're sitting in a cafe, I don't know, it could be anything. You can switch on, you can just switch on a little feature and we will repair those kind of things with the audio. You start to get closer to that kind of Zoom sound. That Skype sound. Okay. So you're compromising the audio, but of course that's by design. You've been given the choice if you want to do that. Okay.
Yeah, we've had to do that lots of times. You pretty much almost do it with every guest that comes through. For whatever reason, they come through, and not a lot of people are very tech savvy, so they don't like. I try to explain to them like, hey, you got to click the gear, pick the microphone you're using on the thing, and try to be quiet and use headphones. They're like, I don't want to use headphones. So they got a lot of echo going on back and forth. So we instantly will go there, click the either full repair or the no headphones repair, I think it is, and get rid of that echo. Yeah,
and I think it's an interesting thing when we talk about podcasting generally, that what's important is the interview. It is good to do this kind of due diligence and get the good environment and so on and so forth. But in the end, what's important is the interaction with the person. So yeah, with Cleanfeed, you've got these options, but it's still laid out we tried to lay this out pretty simply. there's a sort of thing where Cleanfeed, a lot of uses, we get a lot of professional use of Cleanfeed, and but it still attracts a lot of interest from those who like the clarity of a system that does what you ask it to do. Okay, yeah. That's really what we're doing.
So do a lot of radio stations today physically use Cleanfeed to connect their remote stations to each other?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's even a probability that if you've been listening to live radio or radio interviews and things, that you will have heard things that have been recorded with Cleanfeed. So, of course, the pandemic boosted a lot of interest in that kind of thing. We've been powering breakfast shows coming from people's houses and all sorts of variations in between. So
wow.
So yeah, and it's something fairly unique that Cleanfeed gives you, is that super high quality live. So yeah.
What would be the minimum requirements, say internet wise, to run Cleanfeed?
I think it's important to understand that it's more a stability question, stability factor, than it is speed. So you may have a slow line, but you may have everything connected physically with an Ethernet cable from your computer directly to your internet router. And if no one's sharing that line and not much is happening on that line, then everything should work perfectly on Cleanfeed. And we have some people using old, I'm sure there's still a lot of users using old type ADSL connections or DSL connections, and they're using Cleanfeed just fine because that's all they're doing. They're just running Cleanfeed. They're not running anything else. They're not streaming Netflix or any other intensive internet usage things, and they have a great experience. On the flip side, you may have users that have very, very fast internet connections, but maybe suffer from being a bit too far from a Wi-Fi hotspot. And in that case, that can cause some issues sometimes where they're hearing maybe some slight warbles in their
right,
audio.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear like glitches and they glitch out and it kind of ramps up again. I can hear a little bit of that stuff.
Yeah, but the key is the stability factor. And once you've got, a bit of that, actually, it goes a long way. So it's very rare, but that can occur.
Well, when people ask this question, there's one piece of advice that we give them, which is you want to be sharing your internet connection with as few people as possible. Okay, so if you think about all the ways you maybe share your internet, maybe you're sharing the Wi-Fi with your housemates, maybe you're sharing the airwaves or sharing a cabled connection with other people. Okay. So yeah, we just give the advice of you want to share as little as possible. That's where you get best results. Although, I mean, the wonderful thing about modern internet connections is that specifically if you have a modern router in your house or router, you can really, those systems are much better at balancing load between multiple people as well. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's one of these technologies. We've been in this game for a while, so it's one of these technologies that you see changes is happening. Where these things, the focus that people have now on online gaming creates very similar issues with a computer network to something like Cleanfeed does.
So I know that on Cleanfeed, there are multiple settings to take down the quality level of the audio from a low to an extremely high. Now, for the low, would that be something like if your internet is kind of wobbly, or is it just like a cell phone network? I think,
like Marc mentions, it's when you lower the quality here, it's going to allow you to do more with the connection, with the Cleanfeed connection at once. So we have a lot of people maybe doing many guests in a session. They might be doing a group recording for like a movie background, or maybe it's a virtual audience. We've actually had people doing for shows, which is quite interesting. So at that point, these guys do often care about dialing the quality down. If your internet connection's being choppy and unstable, then turning the quality down doesn't necessarily do anything for that. But yeah, like I say, choppy and unstable internet connections, certainly for the level we're talking about with live audio, are just becoming rarer and rarer. Good quality equipment is really letting stuff shine through.
So what happens if you turn it the other direction? You go full throttle on this thing. What do you get?
Well, there is a point. I mean, you've seen, it's like Spinal Tap, isn't it? Turn up the dial to 11 kind
That's
of
right.
thing. There is a point where you're into audiophile territory here, aren't you? Really? I don't know if you sort of met the group that is sort of hi-fi fanatics and. You're basically basically out those final little percent, improvements in an audio system. So yeah, the more you dial up quality dials, that's the more you're getting. Don't forget, the thing with Cleanfeed is we provide a speech optimized setting and a music optimized setting, and we truly mean that. Like, we've used our experience, and we're able to use analytics data to monitor the Cleanfeed network and basically make sure that we place those settings really, really well. So they truly do mean that, speech optimized and music optimized. So dialing the dial up, making so you're moving more data around can create issues elsewhere, and better to choose those settings and just let us tune all the elements together sort of holistically. Yeah. We tune everything together to get the best results for what you're doing.
So what is the difference? I'm sorry. What is the difference between the speech optimized and the music optimized? Other than stereo, what's the difference?
That's principally the difference there.
Okay.
So so if you're doing a speech optimized connection, we drop to mono rather than using Cleanfeed stereo, because Cleanfeed will move stereo audio from one side of the world to the other live, which is, that's what people, if they're doing, say, a broadcast from a concert or something, they would use with Cleanfeed.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Also worth mentioning is you'll be hard pressed to find the differences if you do tweak up the settings. But like Marc was saying, it's those just very final few percentages that if you can hear them and you want that level of detail, go for it. And if it's stable, then great. That's why it's there. But yeah, for the regular listener, it's very hard. It's almost indistinguishable between the two sets.
And it's really interesting with one of the things we found with Cleanfeed is that communities working in audio production, they can be very smart about these things and know what they're doing, but also very busy people. And I kind of think it's really cool that the requirements of a busy person sort of meet the requirements of someone who's a relative novice at something. We all want something that's simple and quick, but we want something that's clear and gets us results quickly. Okay,
right.
So it's interesting, but this, the way in which we've said with Cleanfeed, actually, if we can just provide you with the right option already selected, then that means you can go on and do the thing you are actually doing with this. So even though we're working with some of the smartest audio engineers in the business, that doesn't mean they want to spend their time setting all the knobs up and tuning all the settings and testing it and then seeing if that works okay. So if we can provide them with something that works straight out the box, then that works for professional audio engineers. And the cool thing is that also works for anyone, say, at home who's thinking about making a podcast.
Right, that's what I got. That's what I love about Cleanfeed is that it's very simple to use and it works great. And I just flip it on the speech optimized and away I went. The only time I've ever switched it to the low talkback is when I've had a guest come in through via a phone or an iPhone. For some reason, I don't know, I've had problems with mobile phones where it doesn't seem to quite hold the connection. It could be their internet, it could be their Wi-Fi, I don't know. I can't control those things. I can only control my end, Yeah.
I think when you get used to the amazing quality that maybe we're speaking with now, then when you do, say, call a guest on an iPhone and they're maybe out in the sticks somewhere, if the call drops or varies slightly, you're like, hey, what was that? But of course, when we're just making normal phone calls to people, we actually have become quite used to that in the context of a mobile phone call. So
right.
So yeah, it's the best results with Cleanfeed always come from people with sort of laptop PCs or Macs or Chromebooks work particularly well as well.
So I know that Cleanfeed works in the web browser, and I know that while it's on the web browser, you physically it's somehow it's being saved in the browser, and then from there I download it directly to my computer. But where in the browser does it save?
Well, so we're moving the audio to your machine, and there's a couple of things at play here. One is that we like encryption, which basically means that if Cleanfeed is being used for serious journalism, your audio isn't being sent to, say, us. We can't actually listen to your call on Cleanfeed. Okay. So we send all the audio to your system, whereupon you can save it at your system. So you're always in control of your audio. So, Chris, you were saying, when you press that save button, you can do that at any time. You could even do it now. We're mid-conversation, aren't we? You could press the save button and open that file in Audacity, and you've got the assurance that you've got the recorded audio there, so you can maybe have a listen or check or do anything that you might need. Okay, so we're streaming the audio over to you, and you're doing what's called buffering it in your web browser, and when you press save, it's saving that out to disk.
But how much memory, how much audio, or how much files can my web browser hold?
It's a good question.
Off the top of my head, plenty. There's
really?
Enough. There's some of our Cleanfeed folks become concerned about those limits when they're doing, say, 30-track recordings and things.
Oh wow!
Now, that's a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit absurd. I think you're going to have that might be, say, a virtual audience or something. I've used that before. What I basically mean is where people are doing a comedy show or something, and they actually are trying to record it with people clapping and cheering and laughing and in response to things. If you're doing an interview with 2-3 people, then there's plenty. Just make sure you have plenty of free space on your hard drive. That's basically what we say.
The hard drive, not the RAM, or is it both?
It's not. You don't need tons of RAM. You need to make sure you've got hard drive space. But you're not needing tons of RAM here.
Now, will Cleanfeed or my computer let me know if I'm coming up to the limit?
It's. I'd have to double check exactly which limit you're going to hit and where. One of the things we've done with Cleanfeed is you'll get a few of these little on-screen prompts that tell you exactly what's going on. Okay, so if we anticipate that a problem is going to happen, then you'll get a little prompt. So it's similar to where you get like we can't access your microphone. Here's what to do. Okay.
Okay.
So if you're encountering those kind of prompts, then best to follow them. But otherwise, you should be good to go.
That's fantastic. Now, I've never had a problem getting the audio from Cleanfeed. Now, I've heard horror stories where people say they've had problems getting the audio, or they've had problems with the audio, or it was a clicking sound or something like that. And I personally never had a problem, but that's what I've heard. Do you do anything about that?
I think. We obviously have a support channel, so we keep tabs on all sorts of what people are encountering. We certainly would say that I don't know, whenever this topic comes up, we find a merry group of people who say, "Oh, I had a problem, so I moved to a different service or something to fix that problem." Often these problems are actually something with people's equipment. So, for example, you say a bit of clicking or something.
Right.
We've seen some very poor quality microphones out in the wild and things like that. And also we've seen cases where, for example, you reboot your machine and it performs much better. Okay. So solving these kind of problems can be fun. Thankfully, they're few and far between, which is great. I would say that when you're trying to do professional audio using consumer equipment, then there's a certain investment of time that will pay off. If someone's having an issue, it's often worth investigating why that issue is. Yeah. It isn't necessarily that Cleanfeed doesn't work, or X doesn't work, or Y doesn't work. These various services, because we've seen it from. Within podcasting, there's other companies pitching to recording tools, and we've seen in the forums similar things where people say, "I used this and it was rubbish, so I'm moving to this."
Yeah.
And there's always a new one. There's always a new one that pops up like all the time. There was a new one I just saw pop up, Riverside FM. I think if you heard of it, and the new one, video one, that popped up. But video, like the whole thing now, everyone wants to do this whole video thing. And I know you guys are strictly audio only. Would you guys ever consider in the future maybe adding a video element of some sort?
We consider all these things, don't we, Mark?
Yeah, I think there's certain scenarios and different. I think people want to use video in different ways. If you asked a film engineer why they would want video, they may give you a completely different answer to why a podcaster may want video. So it's certainly something we might consider. But I think it's important to understand that people love Cleanfeed for the audio, and that will always be the focus of what we're doing in terms of keeping that quality. To have something that would disrupt that would be sort of totally against what we're about. But at the same time, if there's the genuine use or requirement for video or anything else for that matter, then we could consider it. But
people also love listening to audio. And that's part of the end result here. I think that's what's great and makes podcasting so accessible. Is it doesn't, there are people doing very cool things with podcasts and video and clips on Twitter and those kind of things. But also, if you're starting out, the great thing about a podcast is that you can get stuck in and make it without needing tons of equipment and without needing to invest too much in looking good. It's great for me. I don't need to look good on a podcast.
Well, you look great to me. You guys both look fantastic.
Well, we do.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
Yeah, but so for example, we're doing this using audio only. Okay, we haven't got some video connected on the side so we can see each other. And I personally like that because it allows us to focus on what people are actually saying. So I think what I'm saying is that, there's always lots of cool innovation, and some of that innovation is around video, but it doesn't necessarily invalidate some of the core principles of why people enjoy listening. They enjoy listening to podcasts because they can listen in the car, or maybe even listen in the shower, or listen while they're out on a run. And also people, audio is a very well-established way of getting a really good conversation with somebody.
Communication.
I love audio. I've been a big fan of audio. I've been a big fan of radio. But of course, I've always had a career driving. I'm a driver, and I've driven around and do it for work. So I'm always in the vehicle driving, so I can't watch YouTube while I'm driving. That's not safe. Tip of the day, kids, don't do that. But so people try to focus on putting this whole video YouTube thing together. And I asked one guy recently, I said, hey, because he put this video of his interviews on YouTube, and then he has the audio version of his podcast. I said, well, how many plays do you get on the video compared to the audio? And he says it's way, way less on the video than the audio. Yeah. Well, of course.
Well, I think there's two different things at play. I don't think one of them needs to be knocked or the other, but it's as you say, you're not gonna be using video as you drive for a living, and it becomes a different medium, I think, as well once it starts to be visual. So it's interesting things to watch, isn't it? I think it's really exciting that people are experimenting with video from home and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but, I think to take a term from radio, theatre of the mind is something that's always stuck with me. Because
what you're saying is the audience just imagines that we're both really good looking, Mark.
There's that, and I could throw in a whole crowd here to cheer for us. I mean, you could have so many different possibilities by using audio and making someone feel that they're in a different space than they may actually be in. At the moment I'm in the toilet, but you'd never know that. But you know what I mean? So it's I do. Let's just clarify. But yeah, that's the sort of a term that's stuck in definitely in my mind. And I think the thing to understand is, well, I'll put you in a film situation. If you're watching something on the screen, actually your brain is processing the audio more than it is actively seeing what's on the screen. And that means the finer details are actually embedded in the audio and what's happening spatially around you. So I think it's, at least from my point of view, the audio is the thing that makes that picture in some cases. And
good audio. That's why surround sound and stuff.
Yeah, I like what you say about theatre of the mind. One of the things, we mentioned about being involved with hospital radio earlier, and one of the things I'm involved with is a children's charity that does hospital radio and play for children in hospitals, and they have radio studios that have resisted the introduction of video because intuitively people say it'd be really cool to see what you're doing, and actually people have said the opposite. They said actually that would spoil the illusion. Because if you put a camera into our studio, then the children who are listening, well, what's going on? Well, the answer is there's a man in a studio with a microphone. But if we take away that picture, then today the man is on a pirate ship or on a desert island, or maybe I'm in space on a space station. So you can actually use you've given your audience a lovely blank canvas that they can fill with their own thoughts, just like reading a book, or creates pictures in people's minds. So I found that quite interesting that they'd resisted the introduction of video, even though they were probably perfectly technically capable of doing it.
Yeah. I love audio. I think it's fantastic. And one thing that we have done on our other show, the Chris and Christine show, is that we try to make the audio extremely clear, thanks to Cleanfeed here, is that it almost gives you the illusion, which is what our end goal has always been, is to make it seem as if our guest was in the same room with us, even though obviously they're not. But
is it obvious? Do you introduce them as not in the same room, or do you just say today my guest is so and so?
We always say our guest is, and we always like to find out, like I did with you guys, find out where we're coming from. It's almost like. It's like, hey, check out what Cleanfeed can do. Like, our guest is like in Nebraska, but they sound like we're in the same room. So check this product out. And we don't plug Cleanfeed a lot when we mention it, but we just kind of show that, like, this is what it could sound like. Here's an example. And that's what I do on this show too, is I give examples of Cleanfeed. You guys are in London, for God's sakes. I hear him in San Diego, California. And we're not in the same room, but to the listener, it may appear like we're in the same room.
Well, to me, it appears like we're in the same room. Like I'm hearing you as if you were in the room with me, So,
other side of the table there. But I think that's the key, Chris, is that it's the transparency to have something to reveal something getting in the way or destroying an illusion of something that sounds perfectly amazing, like, that we're sitting around a table, is what's brilliant. Also about Cleanfeed is that, by having people speaking over each other, by having a natural conversation with someone, and, for someone to be hard pressed to even figure out who's where and who's what. I think that's the beauty of all of this, is that
I think that's the thing I wanted to restore. I wanted to restore the ability to have an argument with Marc. That was basically it, so that we could have a, when the system's good, because you can have a raging argument. You can talk over the top of each other like you naturally do in a conversation.
That. I mean, some people hate that whole like cross-talk kind of stuff, but I love it. I think it kind of gives more of a organic feel to the conversation.
Well, you don't want to be literally talking over the top of each other, trying to force the other person out, but it's a perfectly natural part of natural conversation, isn't it? That we overlap a little bit, and we express our intent that we're going to intervene in the conversation a bit, and so that to me is something that's very powerful when you've got good quality audio. Because it lets you do these things, whether that's in the context of making your podcast, in your case, or anything else that you're doing.
Yeah, I think
you've probably
fantastic.
Encountered it when you're on a Zoom call with someone, or even a phone call, and someone says or tries to break up the conversation. Your initial response is to just stop. And then suddenly your whole conversation is just a bit disjointed. So, that's where this really does
I noticed it with, if you guys have iPhones or whatnot, but on the iPhone FaceTime, when you FaceTime or call somebody, if you're talking, they're talking, it kind of cuts out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's familiar with those. Again, I think it boils down to those systems being, those systems have to be usable by your grandma in poor environments with background noise, and those kind of things. So it's certainly more technically challenging. Well, I say that it's a different technical challenge, basically.
Yeah, I think you're after two different types of results. One is literally I want to say hi to grandma, and the other side is I want to record a really good sounding podcast. Yeah.
different things, aren't they? A different amount of investment is going into the conversation. Time investment going into achieving the result.
Yeah. Now, Cleanfeed, you can just use it other than just talking to you guys over the internet. You can use it locally and just record your entire podcast right onto the thing. And I love doing that too.
That's true. Yeah, and actually one of the cheeky things about that is we know a lot of people who have multiple USB microphones, and Cleanfeed will actually handle those quite well.
Really? So, and separate the two? Yeah. Separate all three of them or four of them? However you guys have?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
So you can record those using what we call a multi-track recording. So that means you get a separate waveform essentially for each person in the interview. So that lets you do extra edits later and those kind of things. So yeah, you can get your local audio devices into the multi-track as well as remote people.
We got started using multiple USB microphones and had to trick the computer. This is how we did it. We actually, there was a setting called a stereo mix setting or something we got to switch on in Windows. And it did something where it combined all the audio, everything going into the computer, no matter what it was, into one wave file, one track. So we did that the first, until we upgraded our gear. We were just doing it that way. And then I realized you can get a interface and you can get separate microphones and get separate audio files. And with Cleanfeed, you guys do it too. And that's what I love about Cleanfeed. It's one of the coolest features is the multi-track recording. And I don't know how many other places do that with as many tracks as possible. I don't know how they do that.
I think it's, I was actually going to say, Chris, when someone is starting out on their podcast journey, we're here from the very beginning, and we can scale as you grow. You mentioning the multi-track recording is actually really cool because you may start your podcast with maybe yourself only, and Cleanfeed is there for you. You can create an account, free account, make a recording for as long as you want, and that's also really important. We don't put any limits on how much you can record. But then when you start adding a co-host, maybe you've got 4 guests one week, and suddenly you're a group of maybe 6 or 7 of you in the studio. Cleanfeed scales to how your production is going or how busy your podcast gets one week and not another. So I think that's really important as well, is we grow as you grow, and we can be as flexible as you need Cleanfeed to be as well. So, but yeah, podcast recording, and especially multi-track recording, is really great because you've got the power in post-production. So that's the process of doing a recording, moving those files into a multi-track editor like Audacity or Adobe Audition, and then really tweaking your podcast as much as you want. Let's say someone's got a dog barking in one of the tracks, and in another track a baby's crying, and they in the recording were messing up the environment. Well, you can clean that up by having those individual tracks for everyone in your session, and whether you've just got yourself and one other person, having that level of control is really great because you can adjust the level of maybe someone's mic maybe was a bit too soft, or maybe someone needed their voice brightening up a little bit, and you can be really specific about that in editing. So yeah, the multi-track recording gives you that power to capture everyone separately, and then in post-production, when you've got a bit more time to think about, hey, look, I want this to all sound a bit like this, or I want to delete all of these bits, but actually maybe I want to take a clip from someone's voice over there and put it on another side of the timeline, and you can do all of that by having all those separate tracks, which is really important.
Right. I think some of the other, I think Zoom. I don't use Zoom that much, but I think it dumps it all into one track. I think, but I can't. Don't quote me on that. But so I've been.
Wouldn't know. I've never heard of it anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What's the Zoom you're talking about? I don't know.
Well, you chuckle, but we've been running a business oriented around a recording tool, obviously. So we don't hold meetings in traditional conferencing systems. We use Cleanfeed to have meetings with folks, and we've found that to be actually a really good way of working. But also, it means we put our tool through its paces as well.
Right. If you're always a fan of your own product, you're using your own product. I mean, you're actually. That's why I tell people who are podcasting is please listen to your own show. Please be a fan of your show. Listen to it. Each week you listen to it, you will grow and you'll find things that you may need to tweak or things like that. And you're like, why does the audio sound like this or like that? 'Cause I've heard a lot of podcasts. They'll just record and upload and be on to doing whatever they do. They don't even listen to it. They don't even check it. And I'm like, what are you doing? At least listen to it.
I think I used to be involved. I was saying about the college radio and the student radio. People improve so much when they're listening to their own shows. Like that's what we found there. We were all in our 20s at the time. Perhaps younger than 20, teens and 20s, and the people who really progressed and went through and finished up in the professional radio industry and the professional broadcast industry, they were the people who were listening to the recordings of their own shows.
Well, speaking of that, I gotta say, I love you guys. I love Cleanfeed. It's been amazing. Other than the multi-track recording, my other absolute favorite feature is the clips like this. How do you guys even do that? How's it even possible?
I just do it with my own voice.
Okay.
You don't need. Yes. So we were talking to a beatboxer earlier, so maybe. No, it's part of. So the clips player is it's super handy, isn't it? Basically,
I
everybody's
love
got
it.
a little bit of audio
Favorite feature.
they need to play. Yeah, exactly. And there are just some things that you do want to do live, whether it's a particular background to shape the sound, or just an effect, or an intro to your show, or whatever. So, it's a variation internally. So we call it clips exposed to you. Internally, it's called carts, which is a homage to the sort of old school radio.
I remember those. They were actually like 8-track. It looked like 8-track. You put it in the machine. I worked on college radio too myself way back in the day.
There you go.
And we had carts from the old radio station would hand down to college the old cart clips they didn't use anymore. And everyone have those.
Yeah. To everyone in the audience who's too young to know what this is. So if you look on YouTube, you find these wonderful, they call them air check videos. Okay. And you'll see old DJs in the studios back in maybe, 80s, 90s. And the carts they were typically blue, weren't they, Chris? They were,
I don't remember. God, so long ago.
And they were, and you would have 2 or 3 cart machines, and it was basically like just one sound on a cart. There were ways to have more than one, but you basically, and it was this really rugged, durable thing. I mean, it was like, or maybe durable is the wrong word, because they did go wrong, didn't they? But they were, these great big chunky things that you sort of shove into the machine and then press play. And so every radio station had something you called a cart wall, which was just shelves filled with all the jingles. And you'd pick a cart off the cart wall and slot it in a player and press play. Okay. And so you occasionally, I think we've called it clips, but internally it's a cart wall. That's kind of what it's modeled on. And those old paradigms never go away. Yeah, exactly. You've just got an infinite number now. So it's all.
Well, the cool thing about your system is that I've played with the clips or the carts many times, and I've done audio clips. I've done music. I've done obviously tons of sound effects. I've done and I've tested it. I've done previously recorded because Christine and I did an episode for her birthday where I secretly called all her family members and like, hey, wish you happy birthday. And I saved all those clips. And we recorded it locally in Cleanfeed, and I chopped them all up in little segments. I said, here, because she couldn't know who was playing because I was pushing the buttons. So she was just listening. And I said, here's a clip. We have a guest who called in to wish you happy birthday. Here they are. I push play on the thing. It plays on Cleanfeed. She hears it live. And it was just a great reaction. I loved it.
No, it's good to have that sort of instant reaction of someone listening to one of those kind of clips. But I think it's also, and you've probably seen this as well, Chris, is that whilst everyone on your Cleanfeed session hears that, if you're doing a multi-track recording,
Right.
that's going on a separate track as well. So
Yes.
if you wanted to adjust the timing, or maybe it was a bit too soft and you wanted to put up that specific clip later on, then that's also really handy to have that in the multi-track recording. But yeah, it's a good little tool that.
Can I make one suggestion about the clips?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is only because we've came with this problem one time. We tried to do a show live, like totally like to the second. But when we recorded a clip, say we did a year in review, our first year, we did let's play clips from our podcast over the last year. So I chopped up clips and I saved them. I dumped them all into Cleanfeed to do play the clips live and get our reaction live. So as I hit play on the cart or the clip, there's no countdown timer on it. So we had to physically make one with our phone, do a countdown. Like this clip is 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Hit a stopwatch. So I know that in radio with the songs, they do have countdown timers on them. Would you guys ever think about putting a countdown onto the clips?
Yeah, sounds like a good feature suggestion. I think we, as you've realised, the clips player as it stands is short clips. So yeah. Once you start playing longer clips, your requirements shift slightly differently. So we've done a few experiments in that area as well. So watch this space.
Right. So that's the only thing I could think of, because I was like, because we didn't know how long the clip was to the second. Because we like it. Now you have like this awkward silence section. Oh, I guess we're back now. So I mean, you can easily trim that up, and we've done that. You can trim, in your anything. But if you're doing like a live thing where you're trying to make a live show, or I guess a live thing, you want to be as tight as you possibly can.
Well, as your requirements get more sophisticated, you might find you can do what a bunch of the Cleanfeed community do, which is you can connect other audio devices into Cleanfeed. Okay. So usually if your requirements are getting a little bit more sophisticated, people will do things like link other applications into Cleanfeed. Okay. So you can do that kind of stuff if you really want to push things. We've even got guys maybe doing like a DJ mix and those kind of things. So you can bridge other applications into Cleanfeed, and then everybody on the Cleanfeed session hears that audio.
That's what I love about it, because I've played clips for guests and things of that sort, and then they get a kick out of it and think it's great. Because as far as I know, I don't know how any other platform that really does that.
Well, that's great then.
Well, I mean, on the site itself, and you can have like a Rodecaster Pro or like some other toys, and you can probably have a guest and you can play clips that way. What I'm talking about, a system like yours, like Cleanfeed, that does everything in the browser, everything right in front of you. I don't have to bring in other gear.
That's true. Yeah, I think that's what you'll see over time is Cleanfeed sort of encompassing more and more of the process, but we're still a little bit like a Swiss Army knife. It can be applied in lots of different ways to do lots of different things, and isn't sort of hostile to being linked in with other tools and things.
So this has been so fantastic. Marc Hills and Marc Bakos, you guys have been so awesome for being on Cleanfeed, being on Podtastic Audio via Cleanfeed today. What if you guys can tell me anything? I mean, you don't have to, but if you can, any future plans for Cleanfeed? Anything in the future you guys thinking, kind of working on or thinking about?
Good question.
We tend to be pretty hush about. I think we really love the personal interaction we have with everybody who comes in, and Marc and I do read everything that comes in on the support channels and those kind of things. As for, we tend to be pretty hush about what's coming up down the pipeline. But if people have suggestions and feedback, then we so warmly receive all of that, and it's all going through into little prototypes and tests, and sometimes we'll do closed testing with smaller groups and those kind of things. That's how some of the features have emerged. So I think I'm going to remain hush on anything specific.
Hey, that's okay.
More importantly, is if you want to find out more, create a free account. Sign up to our newsletter, and when these updates do come out, then we'll obviously let you know. And the other thing to definitely check out and bookmark is our blog.
Oh, I love your blog. I love it.
When we announce new stuff. And yeah, there's some cool things on there, whether it's a little tutorial here or a bit of news or what we've been up to, that will appear over there as well. So yeah, definitely worth create an account, even if you don't use it today. You'll reserve your username. But yeah, have your account, sign up to the newsletter and definitely, check out the blog.
And what's the website, Mark?
For the blog, that's very easy.
For Cleanfeed.
Just for the whole website.
Go to cleanfeed.net. That's...
No, I could ask you guys.
That wasn't very slick, was it? Mark, we need to practice our spiel like that.
I know. Well, why .net, not .com? Was that taken?
No,
we have that actually.
Wait, do you?
Yeah. Why not? I think it sounds cool.
Oh, okay. Or .radio or .sound. Is there .sound? I don't know if there is.
There's some weird domain names out at the moment, isn't there?
There is.
You can pick and choose anything.
Well, guys, this has been so much fun. I have enjoyed this conversation. You guys have been so awesome coming over here to poor little Podtastic Audio here in San Diego. It's been great.
No, it's a pleasure. And hopefully it helps, especially for those that are starting out or are already into the process of making a podcast. And yeah, hopefully whatever part of the journey you're on, that this helps and gets you sort of a brief understanding of how Cleanfeed works. But yeah, go out there, make great audio. That's what it's all about.